I'll go off video.
Hi guys, welcome to PowerCat AI webinars. Yeah. Okay, so my name is Ashley. I'm going to be one of your hosts. I'm going to be in the background helping with polling and just, helping you guys navigate some things. And we have our speaker today, Dwayne Robinson, and I'll allow him to introduce himself.
Hey guys, I'm Dwayne Robinson, Principal Solution Architect over in the PowerCat organization with Copilot Studio. And looking forward to talking to you guys today about something that I think is going to be really interesting. First time I've ever actually presented this content today, so you guys are getting really fresh stuff. And if you ever want to connect with me or follow me, you can scan the QR code and get access to all my different social stuff that I do and be able to keep up with me on LinkedIn and all of those other things. So definitely thanks for having me today, Ashley, and I'll hand it over to you to kind of get us started.
Thanks, no problem, Dwayne. Thank you for being here. As you guys can hear, you guys are getting a little bit of an exclusive, if you will. So, yeah, no, thanks to Dwayne. So before we get started, like Dwayne said, just want to go through some guidelines. This meeting is going to be recorded, woohoo, and it's going to be shared on our site within a week, aka.ms/powercat/AI webinars. And this session is open to everyone, which is awesome. That being said, we ask that you don't discuss any, sensitive topics or Microsoft NDA content. And additionally, we know that this is all about AI and learning about AI, but we do still ask that you avoid adding any AI note-taking agents to prevent distractions for the rest of the audience members. And we do want to hear from you. So we're going to have poll questions. Those are going to be optional and, subject to the privacy statement, but we really do want to hear from you. And so we'll ask for your input, and then you can raise your hand to share, and we'll call on you. And if you guys have questions for us, which is, I know is not even an if, I'm sure you will have questions for Dwayne. This content's going to be really interesting. Please put any of those questions in the AMA tool that I'm going to talk about later. And lastly, I know you guys got these two in the bag. Be respectful of others, and let's have fun. Okay, so the polling tool that I mentioned. So this is our site for the polling tool. It's aka.ms/AI webinar/polling. And this is what you guys will use to respond to our polls. So if you got, everyone can just kind of log on right now and get situated with this site. That way, when the polls come up, you're already ready to go. And the passcode is PowerCat, this exact casing, and no space. And I'm sure those links are also in the chat as well. And then for the questions that you have for our speaker, the other tab in the polling tool right here, it says Q&A. Just go there and add any of the questions you have throughout the session in the polling tool, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can at the end. And feedback. I know you guys are thinking, feedback, we haven't started, but we just want to keep it here and have it here so you guys have it handy. For it towards the end of the session. So just keep that in mind. We really want to hear what you guys have to say. Okay. And so upcoming sessions, that your feedback will definitely help impact our Empower Your Copilot Studio agent with Azure AI Services and a session on storytelling. And these are going to be really exciting. So those are on our site, aka.ms/podcast/AI webinars. Please register. We want to see you there. And if you want to check out any of or really just get into Copilot Studio and learn more about it, we have these links here available for you for the end of the session, after the session ends, just to kind of, get your hands into the content. And then if you have more scaling guidance or toolkit needs, we're actually part of the PowerCat team, as Dwayne mentioned, and we have all these resources, in scaling guidance and toolkits. So go to aka.ms/PowerCat resources if you want any kind of guidance, not just in what Dwayne is talking about today, but in these areas as well. Okay, without further ado, I hand it over to Dwayne to talk about Copilot Studio, demystifying multi-agent and component collections.
Excellent. Well, it's good to get to talk to you guys today, and I hopefully will give you guys some good, cool new stuff to kind of be able to take on and be able to understand. So I'm really looking forward to this one today, because this is sort of near and dear to my heart. A lot of people have expressed that there's confusion in the different part of the world where everyone's asking like, okay, well, I want to build all these different things inside of Copilot Studio. And we said, you know what, there's a lot of confusion around multi-agent and specifically connected agents and component collections and why you would use one versus the other. So we're going to be talking heavily about that. But we'll first start off, if you're new to Copilot Studio, just be aware that Copilot Studio is our end-to-end SaaS platform at Microsoft for being able to build agents and be able to extend first-party Copilot products such as the Microsoft 365 Copilot. Again, end-to-end SaaS. It has everything inside of it. And ultimately, if you really get down to it, Copilot Studio at its core is our conversational orchestration engine that lets you build really complex conversational applications by connecting all these different things together. So if you want to combine a RAG pattern with an MCP server, with a custom topic and an API that you want to talk to, Copilot Studio is a way to be able to do that. And so that's one of the things that's sort of the core of the conversation as we start to build out these really complex agents. We start to get into how do we do that. And a lot of people were really excited about the fact that we got multi-agent capabilities added into Copilot Studio. And let's kind of talk about what multi-agent orchestration in Copilot Studio really comes down to. Well, think of it that if we're really thinking about multi-agent orchestration inside of Copilot Studio, it's really the ability for you to be able to have an end-to-end implementation where you can bring in different agent concepts in and bring multi-agents together to work together in one conversational application. And we also have the ability to do cross-platform orchestration. So if you're saying, hey, I want to add in this another Copilot Studio implementation or things of that nature, we can do that as well. The other thing is that an agent, in a sense, is really around specialization and really being able to say, this is what this particular thing does. So when we start thinking about agents in general, it's important for you to understand that agents aren't components. They are basically specialized containerization of knowledge and tools that are needed to be able to produce a solution for an end user and be able to give it the context of what those group of things are actually doing together. So let's kind of double click a little bit into just the way that Copilot Studio works across the board and the way agents play into Copilot Studio. So we'll first start with, if you're not familiar with Copilot Studio and the way that our orchestration engine works, you can know that the orchestrator is the thing that kind of builds the plan. It figures out what should it assemble to be able to service the user's request that is talking with it. And what you'll find is that there's a whole bunch of different options of things that it can combine in order to be able to do that. An example is we can have a combination of things. And so here, I'll use my little fancy laser pointer thing. So the orchestrator can decide that it could use, maybe it wants to use some topics, and maybe there's different topics it wants to combine. But we also have knowledge, which consists of all of these different other pieces, which are basically RAG patterns or retrieval augmented generation based implementations that allow us to be able to search over certain different things like public websites, SharePoint, Dataverse, files. That gives you the ability to search over that stuff and then be able to answer questions about it, so that way you can add that knowledge to your agent. And then when we look at this, we can also have tools, and tools are just, think of it as a industry standard term for being able to bring in different things into your agent that's not a RAG pattern. So we think about it like a connector, a Power Platform connector, a Power Automate flow, a custom prompt that you might want to do, or an MCP server, which is Model Context Protocol. Or maybe we have computer use scenarios we want to bring in, and that's in the case that you don't have an API, you want to be able to interface with the UI of an application to be able to bring things together. This is something that's coming out. It's not in fully released yet, but it's an example of something that you could consider a tool. And the same for like just a REST API if you wanted to be able to call it as a tool. Now, all of these things, in a sense, are you building your own agent. But imagine if I'm inside of my agent and I wanted to be able to say a group of tools should behave in a certain way, and another set of tools or knowledge or topics should be combined to be used in a completely different way. How do I get that logical way of doing that? Well, that's really where multi-agent comes into its own. So this is where we have the ability to define an agent within an agent. So you have at the top level agent, which is the whole container, we have the ability to give it instructions and explain what the full agent is there to do. And maybe the full agent is an employee assistant. But let's say that maybe I wanted to group a set of tools and a set of topics and knowledge that are specific to, let's say, HR scenarios. Then I can make sure that I can containerize those into this concept of an agent, put them together, and then make those available in the context of the HR scenario. And then I could have this other one that I have containerized all the different tools that I need to be able to say, this is the actual things for IT scenarios. But they all roll up into an employee assistant, and maybe there's a few things that the employee assistant is doing within the context of the parent component. So it kind of gives you this parent-child relationship of this, but the ability to build these logical groups of tooling with an explanation on how those things should be used and in what context as part of your agent. So it's kind of like a really cool concept to be able to do this. Now, the thing that starts to confuse a lot of people is when we start going into connected agents. And now connected agents are going to be when I want to connect my agent that I've created to something external, to something that's not inside that application. And in this case, we currently, we're supporting Copilot Studio agents, so that is actually out today that you can do that, and also Fabric Data Agents is out today. But you'll see that we're also going to be bringing in the SDK capabilities so that, and it's basically the rebrand of the Bot Framework SDK as the M365 Agents SDK. And this is going to give you the capability to build an agent where you want to write it in code directly, things of that nature. So just be aware that being able to connect one of those, or maybe I created something in Azure AI Foundry and I want to be able to make that available as well as a connected agent. Now, each of these things are their own standalone application by themselves, and maybe people connect to them directly just the same as they would connect to them through our agent over here. We might be connecting over here and going in to these different agents, but each of these can stand on their own. Someone could connect into a specific agent that helps with, I don't know, like IT service management. It can still be its own agent, and only people who just want to talk about just IT service management could connect to the IT service management agent, but it could also be part of a roll-up into an employee assistant that sits to the left. Now, the idea here is that we want you to be able to bring these different functional standalone applications together. Now, let's kind of look at this and say, well, wait a minute, which one should I use and when should I use that particular thing? When we're talking about focused agents, which is the one that are embedded versus connected agents. And the idea behind a focused agent is when you're building something that's inside of your application, you want it to be part of your application, and your entire agent is part of a single solution that you're going to publish and maintain as an application. The other way that you would use these is you want to also have it where it's logically grouping those tools and those instructions so that way you get a actual defined child agent within the larger agent itself. So again, kind of what we talked about with the IT, the HR, all rolling up into the employee assistant. But imagine you don't want separate configuration settings, you don't want different authentication, you don't want a separate endpoint. This is not an integration to another item. It is just containerizing with inside of this. What are those logical components that make up that particular feature set within that agent itself? So that kind of gives you an idea of that perspective. And then also, these are all intended for a situation where I don't intend to publish these agents separately. In other words, I don't have a need for an end user to connect to just that piece of the agent independently. Matter of fact, I don't even want them to be able to do that necessarily. So the idea here is that you can actually build inside of focused agents this way. Now, with a connected agent is going to be this where we have multiple teams or developers managing these agents independently. So think of it that I have a organization that's building an application and maintaining an application, and I have another organization building and maintaining an application, but I want to connect these two. So this is where you would have this. A lot of people confuse that particular statement right here with the fact that they think that the reason that you would do this is because you want to be able to develop pieces of your agent independent of one another in different dev teams. That's not necessarily what we're saying here. What we're saying is you have two different holistic applications being managed by two completely different orgs, and it has a standalone capability that's associated to the connected agent itself. If you don't intend to have people directly connect to that agent, then you really should evaluate focused agents or even a component collection as what you're going to do. And we're going to get into component collections as well. The next thing is maybe you need to publish and maintain these agents independently and from one another, and even potentially have one of these agents connect to multiple different channels, maybe more channels than the parent was going to connect to. So when we have that world, you need to think of it that each of these things are going to need to have and maintain their own set of channels and everything, because as we go to the second one, they have their own dedicated settings, they have their own authentication, they have their own endpoint that's being managed and things of this nature. So again, they are meant to be standalone agents that you're connecting in. And then keep in mind that when you do this, you're going to have an independent application lifecycle management process that's happening for each agent. And where this starts to kind of break down is when you start thinking about how are we going to build my agent, you want to think about, do you really want to have to maintain a complete and independent application lifecycle management process for that specific agent? Because when you're going to do that, it does mean that you're going to have a situation where it is an integration. So when you update application A, there has to be some sort of coordination with the other application that's consuming application A to be able to know that you've made a change. If you make a breaking change that you took a dependency on in the parent, it could cause you some problems if you are not thinking about how you're doing integration testing and things like that, where in a lot of development cycles, we can have, like a development, a QA, and a production implementation or environment set. In the case if you're going to do connected agents, I would highly encourage you to also include an integration layer, because at an integration environment is going to really probably need to be done so that you can verify as you move up that you can do test everything that's integrating with one another. Because when you do these different implementations like this, you could inadvertently break something that you didn't intend. And so with that, what I want to do is I'm going to go into multi-agent, and I'm going to kind of demonstrate multi-agent in a certain way for you guys today. So let me switch over to my screen here. Maybe get a quick thumbs up. Everybody can see Copilot Studio, right? Excellent. Thanks for the thumbs up there, Dennis. So, all right. So now let's say that we've got this agent here that we're building, and inside of that agent, that right here this is going to be our parent agent, where we're going to bring it all together. And what I want to show you today is I want to show you that if you kind of scroll through, you'll see different agents, and you'll see agents down here. So this is pretty much an empty one, and let's click over to agents and let's take a look at this. You'll see there's nothing inside of it today. But if we wanted to create an agent, we can go create an agent inside of our current agent by clicking here. And when we do this, we're going to have all the explanations and everything that we want to do, and then what kind of tools we want to give it. And you can see here, we can give it descriptions, we can give it instructions, we can add knowledge and tools to it. So this gives us the ability to kind of make that logical group, but it's inside the agent itself. So there doesn't seem to be as much confusion about this particular one. So I'm not going to spend as much time on it today, because what I want to do is I want to showcase for you guys, and you can see once I create one, it shows up here. So what I want to do is I want to focus in on the connected agent, because a lot of people, this is where they get really, really confused when we start to build things. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an example of a connected agent by going ahead and saying click add. I'll go into, I guess I should go through this really quick just to make sure that you see. These are the connecting to the externals. So when you see these are the external connected agent implementation. So, and a lot of people think, oh, well, I'll go build all my different components, and I'll build a ServiceNow implementation, and then I'll build a Salesforce implementation. And that's really not the intention of this necessarily. This is more of maybe you have an ITSM agent that also includes some ServiceNow stuff, and you want to connect to that thing directly and not always through your employee assistant. That would make sense why you would do it as a connected agent, potentially. But what if you came in and you said, hey, I want to connect one. So I just select it, and I go to this Porsche 911 one that I've got, which is one of my fun little demos that I always like to do. And I'm going to actually modify the description, because you can do this. You can explain, so this is me as the maker explaining how to use that connected agent. So I don't have to take everything, like the way that agent works and the description that came from that agent. I can actually modify that and say, this is how I want to use that agent, and give it some context to be able to say, here's how I want it to be orchestrated to. So I went ahead and gave some additional information about what I want it to do and how I want it to work. And then you can see here's the description, the instructions, and then you can even see here where it says past conversation history to this agent. So I can say, yeah, give it the context of what we're talking about whenever we're working with it. So I'm going to go ahead and say add agent. And by doing this, it's going to add in this other agent that I have, which is this Porsche 911 manual one. And now because we've done that, I can now come in and I can have a conversation with this agent about things about this Porsche thing. So I can say, I want to check the status of my Porsche order. And you'll see it over here on the left. Here, I'll just kind of zoom this out really quick so you can see. You'll see here that it's going through and it's going and getting the information from that agent, and it's going to the connector inside of that agent to be able to go answer this question. Now, once we've done this, and hopefully we don't have any issues with the demo environment today, but if we do, no biggie. So, and you'll see here, it's just that the connector timed out here. So, but If we go ahead and ask it a different question, like I would say, I want an info packet from Portia. Notice that it goes and it fires the topic here that says, what is your name? Now, what is actually going on here that is causing this? Well, what it's doing is it's looking at the inventory of the things that agent has in it. So let's switch over to that other agent and let's take a look at it, because, and it actually kind of is a good example that we had an error happen, but that error happened in the other agent. So let's look at what would happen if we started to play with this, and what's the experience of a connected agent as the maker of the parent. So when we start to look at this, when we're inside of this 911 one, imagine I'm the developer now of the 911 one that's being consumed. You'll see here that I've got a topic here, which is the request info packet. And one of the things that I did is I made it so that we can actually produce an error. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it on purpose to show you guys what could happen. So I'm going to come in here and actually change this from is not equal to is equal to, and I'm going to save it. Now, once I've done this, we're going to come over here and we're going to test it. And we're just going to say the same thing we just said to it. We're going to say, I want an info packet from Portia. And when I say this, I get this error, okay? Because I created something in this state. Now, if we come back over and we look at this agent, and let's just refresh it so this way you guys can see this easier. And I come in and I say, I want an info packet from Portia. Now, when I do this, notice that it did not give me the error. Now, if we flip back over, that's because of the fact that I need to publish it. So let's come over back into the agent and let's say publish. And we're going to go ahead and publish our agent as the person who is updating our connected agent. And I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a nuance here that on this, because there's something within the early release version that is a little different, and I'll explain it, than it will be when it is in general availability and full release. And there's actually an update that's coming shortly that's going to actually make it behave exactly like I'm showing you today. So if we go over and let's refresh this, and I'm going to ask this question again, or I'm going to say this again to it. Notice that what's going to happen on the back end now is I get the error because it's been published on the other side. Now, currently today, one of the things that it doesn't do is it doesn't do this in the channel specifically. So if I publish my parent agent to Teams, you'll notice that until I publish again in Teams, this main agent in Teams, it will not give me the error. But the way the test canvas works inside of Copilot Studio today, where when I published the connected agent, I get the immediate impact of what happened to the connected agent will be the production implementation version of how this will work. So just be aware that is what I would consider a piece of feedback that we got, that people do not want any type of caching happening here. They do want to be able to have it where you are always hitting the production API, because if you didn't want that, that's where component collections, and this is going to be where component collections is very different. So I want to make sure that you guys kind of see that I can go and modify this, and the connected agent is live being updated without a publish on the parent. That is a possibility that can happen. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to flip back over to our deck. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that I kind of get some feedback from you guys. So what we want to do now is we want to understand, have you guys used multi-agents yet? Have you started playing with it? Is it, and things of that nature. So I wanted to kind of just get a real quick understanding of that. And while I think we might flip over for you guys to be able to see those results, and we'll let a few results start coming in on this. What I want to make sure that you guys think about, how important this is to you and things of that nature. And feel free to put some stuff into the chat, or go put stuff into the Q&A tool as well right now, because the thing that we're looking at is multi-agent configuration is not a component. It is not for you to go and say, I want to build microservices. Microservices, by definition, are stateless. By definition, an agent is stateful. It must have state. It needs to transfer conversation state. We're actually looking at things like, how do you transfer the variables between the different agents, so that way you get the information that you collected in the parent, it can be passed downstream and things of this nature. So there's a lot of key things for you to think about. And a lot of people think that what they really want is a whole, like a 5,000 agents, and then have a master parent agent that's going to somehow figure out which one to go get with all these different tools. That's not really the goal of it. It's not. It's to containerize. An agent, by definition, is to be able to bring like this consistent capability and group of knowledge and group of tools. Not, here's the API for ServiceNow, here's the API for Salesforce, here's the API for Dynamic CRM. That's not what you really want. What you want is a logical conversational context of what this agent does, and bring it in with a common description instruction sets on how it should behave, so that it can assemble it with the context of what you have. So don't think of it as logically breaking out tools. Tools exist, so we don't need to worry about an agent being a tool. And if all you have is a one-to-one combo, then you're really not getting what an agent is. You're just building what we're going to go into next, which is a component collection. And don't get me wrong, component collections are important as well, but they have a different use case and they work in a little bit different fashion. And I think you guys are going to find a lot of value in that. So let's go back to the presentation. Thanks for filling all that out. And what I want to do now is I want to go into a component collection. So what are component collections in Copilot Studio? Well, this is the ability to build reusable assets in Copilot Studio. So that you can go in, and it's kind of, think of it like DLLs, right? I want to be able to take this set of things and I want to make it reusable and redistributable over and over again, so that I can use it in a bunch of different applications. So if I wanted to build how to interface with ServiceNow, I could come up with all the connectors and all the topics and all the tools that make that happen, package that all up, and then distribute it out and say, here you go. Here is an actual implementation of ServiceNow. And if you want to use it, because it is solution aware, it's basically a solution that has just those pieces in it. It means that you can hand that out to your makers, and they can just consume it right out of their library of available component collections in the environment. So this is great for like COEs. And it also means that they can be managed or unmanaged. And by doing that, that means I can make a component that someone can use, but they can't modify it. Or I can make a component that is reusable, and when I modify it in that one spot, it modifies it everywhere at the same time. So these are super powerful in the way that they work. So if we talk about that, we can kind of think about it that when we look at a Copilot Studio component collection, it's really inside and being executed as part of your agent, but it is not necessarily contained within the solution itself. It's its own solution. So really, in order to think about this logically, if you're very familiar with solutions inside of Copilot Studio, you can think of it that it's a solution taking a dependency on another solution. But the code is going to get executed as part of your agent. So it is ingested into the agent itself so that you can control it and you can actually bring it right in. But if I go and modify a topic that's inside of my component collection, I am modifying it for everyone using that component collection when I do that. So just be aware of that. So that's a lot of the reason why what you will see is that many people will develop their component collections in their own development environment, and then they will publish them into a location for other makers to be able to assemble the solutions that they want. And so you might find that there is a personal development environment that's very helpful for building component collections, or you even have a group of developers building a component collection and then releasing those components the same way you would as a production solution. So when we start thinking about that, let's look at how we might do case management in the case that I want to make a reusable asset for this. So imagine I have a bunch of topics and tools that I've created that I needed to pull together to be able to build a case management solution inside of my organization. Well, now I can package that up into a reusable asset, and then the HR agent and the IT agent can both consume that one set of code consistently. And when I update case management, it will update it for HR and IT in their environments, potentially. So let's talk about what I mean by that. So imagine that we have a situation where we also want to do managed and unmanaged. And I'll go into versioning control in just a second, but also keep in mind that maybe case management, I want to lock it down. I want to make it managed so someone can't modify it. And it's consumed by the HR agent and the IT agent. But IT knowledge, I want to make IT knowledge something that I want to componentize it because I want everybody to be able to have access to it as a reusable asset. But I could also leave it unmanaged so that that particular one, someone could go modify it and add a different knowledge article or a different source for IT knowledge, and it be available to everyone as a mechanism. So these are different ways that we can handle this through managed and unmanaged solutions. Now, when we get into versioning and releasing, I kind of wanted to walk this through for you guys because you got to think about it that we have a lot more control over release management now because we have this. So imagine we have all of these different, we've got two agents on the left and we've got component collections on the right. And all of them are at version 1.0. But imagine what I want to do is I want to version release to version 1.1 for case management. It means that I can do that and then push that into the development environment for people to update and make it available. And then I can then allow the HR agent and IT agent to determine when they're ready to go publish this change out because it will update their dev environment whenever I do that in dev, and then we can push the change all the way through, and then until they go to version 1.1 of theirs, the user doesn't see the change of case management version 1.1. Meanwhile, we could leave IT knowledge at version 1.0 and not have to worry about this. Now, as we move forward, imagine I move to 1.1 and I decide maybe I also want to make a 2.0 version of case management. I could also take the approach of creating a duplicate, basically duplicating it out and making a new component collection that's new case management v2. And then I could allow that to be released into the environment. And then the maker of IT agent and HR agent can decide when they want to take on 2.0 and then release that independently of one another. So that way I'm in full control because these are things where I have to decide, think of it that I'm bringing these component models in, But until I hit that publish button, and after testing it and saying I'm ready to publish it and pushing it through my pipeline, until I've done that, the user doesn't see the change. It allows me to be able to test these things. Now, you can do this with connected agents as well, but it's a coordination that has to be done on the back end. And so what I want to do now is I want to show you guys a component collection demo and show you kind of how to create them, how they're managed, all of those type of things. So let's jump right back in. Okay, so now that we're inside of our agent here, and I'm just going to refresh this, close our test pane, and go back over to overview. Inside of this, what I've already done is I've already created some component collections. So if you're not familiar with component collections, you can get to them by open your agent, go to settings, go to component collections, and you'll see installed and available. If I go into available, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to add chit chat. So one of the things that I recently released out to and put in the Copilot Studio samples repo is a chit chat module for you guys. So if you want to be able to make your agent chit chat, but you don't want to take model knowledge from your knowledge, then you can just come in and download this and install it. And I actually will be doing that for you guys today in the demo, because we're going to version this while live with you guys. Is you can come in and say add it to agent once it's there. And now what's going to happen is you'll see that the chit chat agent is installed. Now, once I've installed it, what I'll do is I'll show you what it did. It went in and it created a chit chat module. Now, I'm actually going to turn off thank you, and I'm going to follow the instructions that we have, which is turn off thank you and turn off greeting to make that one work exactly how I want it. And then let's take a look at this. Now, when we open up the chit chat module, you'll see here that I can actually click it, I can modify it. You don't see any issues here. But if I modify it, I'm modifying it for everyone when I go in and I modify it. So this is an unmanaged solution that we have. And just to show you guys that this is kind of working. Well, we hope it's working, right? I can say something like, hey there, I like cats, do you? And what you'll see is it'll fire chit chat, it'll come back and it'll give me something. And notice I've got this little error that's in it, which is an error that actually is populated in the version 1.2 version. So we're going to fix that error live today. And I'm going to show you that's one of the reasons we released the 1.3 version. So, but before we do that, let's go in and let's take a look at the other module that I want to install. And so I'm going to go into settings and I'm going to go back to component collections, and I'm going to go to the available ones, and I've got one called PII checker. And I'm going to go and I'm going to say add this to the agent. Now, once I've added this into the agent, you'll see that it's installed right here. And if we come back in and we look at our topics again, you're going to see that now I've got this PII checker. Notice it's on by default. It can't be turned on and off, but it is part of a component collection. And if I click in on it, you're going to see this is not customizable. And that is because this is a managed component collection. So while I can see what it does, and I could troubleshoot and figure out what all's going on, I can't necessarily edit it. And what I'll show you is just a sample of this. Is if I came in and say, what is the address of the Microsoft headquarters? What you're going to see happen now is it's going to go through and it's going to say, oh, wait a minute, I can't answer that question. And the reason it can't answer the question is because of the way the AI prompt is set to say, I don't want you to be able to give addresses and stuff like that out. Now, granted, you could adjust the prompt to whatever you would want, but the idea here is I can't change that because the organization has decided what that definition of PII is. And so I would need to tell the person who is responsible for that particular module, hey, I need you to fix this because of this scenario. And so this is an example of a managed component collection. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you one other thing, which is let's go in and let's actually update a component collection. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and say that I want to, you basically click the ellipsis, you say import agent. That will open up this UI for your solutions. And I'm going to say import solution. Now, the next thing is I have to go browse and go get it. And you're going to see that I've got this Chit Chat v3, the 1.13 version that fixes that error that we had earlier. Oh, maybe I have to click it again. Here we go. There we go. And then we're going to hit next. And then you're going to see the current version installed is 1.2, but the version contained in the update is 1.3. So I'm going to go ahead and say I want to import that. And once I do this, you'll see it going through and it's importing the solution, the new Chit Chat component solution. And you're going to see here that right now it's at 1.2. And once this completes, what we're going to have is we're going to release this to a 1.3 version inside of our agent. Now, keep in mind that downstream, I'm not going to necessarily do this because you guys don't want to sit and watch publishing a ton. But what will eventually happen is that for the users to be able to see this on my production side or make it available fully or to be able to export it to the next level of my pipeline, I'd have to go through a publishing action on the parent, because right now all we're doing is bringing in this new version. And now everyone in the environment is going to have 1.3. So if we go back to our implementation here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Shift F5 here, just so that way we get any caching of the web browser out. And what I want you to see is that if I go into topics now, and I go into the Chit Chat module, one of the things that it added, it actually also added multilingual as well, and you can see that changed in it. And if I go in and I do a test for this, and let's see if we got rid of our bug that had it where it was doing something that I didn't like. So I've asked it that as well. And voila, now we don't have our bug. So this is just to give you guys a good example of how these different things work together. So I'm going to go back to the presentation, and then we're going to get over to questions and things in just a second. Let me jump back over. And let's talk about this last part, which is going to be, okay, so which should I use whenever you're looking to do this? So component collections are going to be used when you have reusable assets that can be independently versioned from one another. It's also a place where you want to be able to let the maker determine when to take the changes from the component that's being created. Then it's also, you don't want to have independent applications. You don't want to have application A and application B. You want to have one application, but you want to have these reusable assets, and you want to be able to manage that communication and testing of the releases as part of your for your consumers for your solution. So in other words, I don't necessarily trust that team downstream is going to let me know that they've made a change and it's going to affect someone. Now, granted, I would hope that you could catch that in your integration environments before you publish it all the way out, but there's a risk there because you're taking a direct integration to another system. So just be aware that in this case, the release management of this is under the control of the maker of the agent. The other is you don't want to, maybe you want developers in different groups working on the same application, but you don't want them working on the same pieces of code. Maybe I only want them working on certain topics, and team A to work on team A's topics and team B to work on on some tools. This allows them to be able to build those, send them back up as managed, and then provide them back out. The other is going to be When do we use connected agents? Well, we use them when we have multiple teams or developers managing different agents completely independent of one another. So they are completely different teams building completely disparate applications. Then you have a need to publish and maintain agents separately and be able to allow people to talk to those over there directly in independent channels. So while the two can talk to one another, they can also be spoken to directly. Then when we get into agents must have, they're going to have their own dedicated settings and their own authentication configurations and things of this nature. So if you need to be able to have that, then connected agents is the way to go. The other is they each are going to have their own independent application lifecycle management process for each agent, which is going to possibly need an integration environment and a strong communication channel that's happening between these two organizations who are building these disparate applications to make sure that there's no breaking changes that are happening when they are versioning each of their releases. And then maybe you just want changes to just happen when the agent is updated without the need for publishing and such. So maybe it is that there's going to be features added into a specific thing or thing that you're connecting to. You don't really care if they add additional features. You don't need to go through any testing because the way you've built it is you haven't taken any direct dedicated like integration with it, but you just want it to be able to orchestrate to it if it needs to be able to do it, and you don't really care if there's going to be a situation where they add some additional new features to it. So these are all kind of the things that you want to think about. Now, I'm going to jump into a question for you guys, and then I'm going to hand it back over to Ashley for us to talk more in Q&A and such. But the thing that I'm really interested in is, did this session kind of change your thoughts about how to package things for agents? And if so, how? I would really like for you guys to kind of think about how this is very different than one another, because they are very different. They're similar in the way that they work, and a lot of people get confused on this. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to really give you guys some more details as to why you might use one versus the other, because it can be confusing between the two because there is some overlap in a way of how these things work. So wanted to kind of get some general feedback from you guys on, is this valuable? Did it change your mindset? Maybe you know more about component collections than you did before, because we don't really talk about them quite as much as we do multi-agent, because multi-agent's really cool and such. And Dan, yes, this session will be recorded. It is being recorded, and it is going to be handed out because it is part of our webinar series. So all webinars are actually going to go out on our YouTube channel and all that type of stuff as well, and everything. So hopefully this is super helpful for you guys. I felt like I could feel the world around me and the customers I was talking to all feeling this pain and not really understanding how to do this, and building these really complex and highly orchestrated things using connected agents, because they didn't really understand the function of a connected agent. They were trying to turn it into a component model, and it's not really intended to be a component model. And unfortunately, even some of the demos we show, I know, are confusing because they use them in a component model type of way, but it's kind of hard to get the full concept across the entire world. So we're kind of working on that. So hopefully this is super helpful. So go ahead.
Exactly. Sorry for interrupting you right now. I'm just really excited
Go
about
for it.
These responses. The question that I have is, I love that this session did help, but if by any chance you felt like there's some things that you were still unsure about, we'd also love to get those types of responses here too. So don't just see all these yeses and feel like, oh man, I can't share it, but I still kind of have this question, because we want to answer all your questions, but we can only do that if we know what they are. So if you have that, if everyone thought it was great, then that's also a win. But yeah. Okay.
All right. So actually, turn it over to you to kind of take us toward the Q&A time.
Absolutely. And I'll leave this poll open for you guys to just kind of, give us your feedback. Which, speaking of feedback, let me know if you guys can see my screen. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep, it looks
Okay,
good.
awesome. Great. Okay, so before we get to the Q&A, feedback. So if you guys could just go to this aka.ms/AI-webinar/feedback link and just tell us what you think, what you thought. Like I said, your feedback matters. That's why we keep having Dwayne, because you guys love Dwayne and we want to give you guys what you want. So I'm just gonna leave this. I'm just gonna be quiet for like 1 minute just to kind of give you guys some time to respond and gather your thoughts. So just 1 minute of like, time for you guys, and then I'll hop up over to the Q&A portion. So.
Yeah, and just so you guys know, we're going to hang out until 15 after the hour for Q&A. So don't feel like we're cutting you short here.
I do have one question, or just maybe some clarification. So for multi-agent, agent to agent, that's more like application to application orchestration. And the component collections is, hey, I have some like reusable topics. I have maybe a connector where I don't want people changing the authorization. I want to share that. Is that more the concept that we're getting to here? Because it's still blurry for me.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, basically what you have is you have a situation where when you're thinking about application to application integration, it's like, think of it this way. The best way to think about it is imagine that, stop thinking about these as chatbots, right, for a second. Start thinking about it as, I have an application and an application. And if this application needs to call that application's API to do an integration, that's what we're talking about. That's what a connected agent is. It's this agent is connecting to that thing to get the answer to the question. Mm-hmm. If you make a change in the other thing, right, then it's going to happen real time over here, right? So, and if you break your API that's talking back between the two, you break the contract, you break it, right? And so that's where, when we start looking at this, it's a matter of understanding that what you're really getting whenever you go to do this. So this is why it's important to understand, one of them is building components, reusable assets, and the other one is building integrations to other applications to expose that functionality within your application. Yep. And so, but you're building a contract between the two, right? There is no contract when you just consume a piece of code and run it within your own runtime. If there's a new release of a component, then you decide when you're taking that new release and releasing it up through your dev cycle. So it's very different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dwayne. And I'm not sure who asked that question, but thank you so much. That shows us that it's time to hop over to the Q&A portion. So yep. This is where we are. I think Philosophy put the link in the chat. So if you have questions, please put them in this Q&A tool that we have here. And there's only 7 questions right now, so we'll probably get to all your 7 questions, or I guess your 8th if you add it. I know I see some hands raised, so if you guys could also just add those to the chat. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, we would prefer not to do anything on the recording get it into the tool, because that gets it recorded for us to know and be able to give people information on maybe you should update your knowledge article on this, right? So if you guys just ask it on the chat and stuff like that, that's not really where we're going to be monitoring that. If you want us to address the question, put it in the tool, scan the thing. I know you hate it, but it's the way that we can make sure that your voice is being heard back up. Okay, so we'll start with this top one. It's still not clear when you use child agents versus connected agents. In the case you need to have the child agent to have its own knowledge, tools, and topics to use, would you create a connected or a child agent? So it has nothing to do with anything around necessarily what's inside of it. It has to do with how do you want to release it and contain it. So if you want it to be part of your runtime as a connected, as a child agent or a inline agent or a focused agent, whatever we want to call that, right, where it's inside of your project, it means that that code base is inside of your agent. And so inside of your parent agent. So it's just a container to give it context and additional instruction sets around this set of tools and things of that nature. When you do a connected agent, it is an integration to a completely different agent, which has its own set of instructions, tools, and knowledge and everything as well. So just be aware that it's, while they are similar, it has to do more about how you're packaging it in order to release it, and who is writing it and who is coding it. When you do it with connected agents, I would tell you I would lean away from connected agents unless it's necessary, because you're just adding more complexity for really no real value if all you're trying to do is give custom instruction sets over a set of tools and knowledge to be able to say, hey, this is the HR stuff and this is the IT stuff inside of my agent. I would keep those things in the same agent as much as possible. You'll get better performance, in my opinion, and it's all running and executing against the same runtime. You have much more control as the maker, and you don't have as complex of a release strategy and integration challenges you'll have to do, because you haven't even gotten into state transfers. Like, all your variables will be available to you without you having to define how to transfer the variables over to something. So if you upload or you go download your entire user profile and you want to be able to reference that, and you want to be able to reference that in a child agent, it will work by default. In a connected agent, you're going to have to do some sort of integration and agree on where you're going to pass that data. So just be aware that there's a big difference between the two. And if you guys feel like there is a need for a session to deep dive on child agents versus connected agents, we can do that. That's a great piece of feedback to throw in the feedback tool. Can you give us some use case where we can actually use this multi-agents? Well, I think I did. So a great example is employee assistance, right? So what we see is a lot of people will go in and say, I want an employee assistant. And in some organizations, what we're seeing is that organization does not want to have they want to have a single employee assistant. They do not want to have an HR assistant, an IT assistant, and then an employee assistant that wraps those things. They want one employee assistant. So that would be an example of a strategy where I would use a child agent. For connected agent, I've seen the direct opposite. Imagine you are a organization and you have a lot of subcontractors. They still need to be able to open up ITSM tickets, but they don't want the HR piece. So you would wrap an employee assistant. That employee assistant would be exposed with both IT and HR, maybe, but the HR piece might be its own agent, might be a connected agent opposite of that. The IT agent might be its own agent, because when I have subcontractors, they don't need to talk to HR ever. But they still do need to be able to talk to IT and open up support cases. So this is a place where you would see a connected agent be a good architecture, because of the fact that I might want my IT help desk to have its own agent. Now, I would not do ServiceNow. I would not do, SAP. That's not how these things are built to work. They would need to be, this is the IT support agent as a connected agent. I would not do it the other way. And we can go to the next one. With child agents and connected agents, what does the conversation transcript and Dataverse capture? What is logged in Purview? Is it interactions per child agent, focused agent, and parent agent level? Okay, so the conversation transcripts will exist. My understanding is that the conversation transcripts will show in the parent for the conversation when it is created, for when you are connected to this. And as far as the logging and everything, you will see the child agent will do the logging in Purview, and the parent agent will do logging inside of Purview as well. For all child agents will always be logged within the container of the parent. The next one is, can go ahead and move to the next one, which is component collection only useful for keeping track of component versioning, ALM, and master distribution scenarios, or are there other scenarios that are useful too? Oh, well, I'll answer the one that I was just talking about. So the answer to your question is component collections are also extremely useful if you are in a partner scenario where you want to create reusable assets that you can go into different projects. Because the cool thing about a component collection is that you can package it up this way and then use that component to update into something. A lot of people are like, I want templates, but templates require you to instantiate a new agent in order to be able to use that code. So if you want to be able to make reusable code snippets, that's why you'll see in the samples repo, a lot of the things I build for you guys, I give it to you in a component collection, because with a component collection, you can take that component in, and then you can even go in and take a component collection and move the topics out. So let's say that I wanted to give it to you as something you could ingest into your existing solution. You go in and you get it. You can then even go in and select all the items that are in the component collection and say, move that into my agent. And then you'll end up with an empty component collection that you can purge and delete. So it's another way also to be able to bring in subcomponents of code into your project. So there's a lot of different really valuable things of component collections. It's very much a way for packaging, version management, redistribution, things of this nature. And if you're like wanting to put samples out on GitHub, these are different ways. Very popular inside of COEs to make reusable packages that you can distribute to different people. And yes, you can build a template that uses a component collection as a part of the template. Just know that you have to make sure that when you instantiate your new agent, you got to make sure you've got the correct component collections in. All right. The next one, how does debugging work with multi-agent systems? Can you explain that? So the way that it would work is if you're debugging, you would do it the same way. You'd go into the activity itself in the activity view and be able to see where is it doing what it's doing. But when you get into a problem set of, hey, I need to be able to debug a thing I don't have access to, it is going to be something where you will need to be able to provide the conversation context, and then it would have to get looked up in the transcripts, and you'd have to review that with the people who are owning the child or the connected agent. So unfortunately, debugging with multi-agent can become very complex when you do connected agent strategy, because it's something where you're not going to do the actual debugging of code that you don't actually own. You will see what you got back, but you will not be able to modify it. And we are working on some additional debugging tools and things and strategies on how to be able to do this. But just be aware that there are some changes that are actually happening right now inside of the release strategy and for the way that connected agents are working. So we've heard a lot of good feedback in the preview. And so there is a new version of that going to be coming out in preview that's going to address a ton of that. And then once we get where we know that this is the best way for the runtime to execute and the way for it to work, then we can start layering on debugging tools to help make that easier as we go. Okay, next one. What does the cost structure look like for a connected agent compared to a single agent? It really doesn't have much of a difference in the cost structure, other than you should think of it that it's going to be called the same way as you're going to still use it as a tool that's being orchestrated to. So you're still going to get that message cost that's associated to going and finding the right thing. It's just that you're going to see it build back out through, my understanding is that it will get billed to the parent, is the way that I understand this to work today. But that would be a great piece of feedback for you guys to go and provide, is that if you have a situation where you want different billing controls dependent upon on a connected agent strategy, you should absolutely provide that feedback in this session, so that way we can make sure your voice is heard by the engineering team for that, because I don't know that that's the current strategy. All right. Next one. To clarify, if we add only a child agent, not the full Copilot Studio agent, does it make it our agent already multi-agent, or is it like a third category? Try to understand if there are any benefits of child agents to mitigate complications of multi-agents. Updated after we talked about child agents versus connected agent. How would you describe the use case for a child agent versus a topic then? Oh, that's easy. So so it sounds like you just updated it. You want the last question here, which is, what's the difference between a topic and a child agent? And I get this one a lot. And by the way, if you want a session on that, I can give you a session on that as well. But at a high level, the difference between the two is a topic is it is a single execution. It's a single like intent and how you're going to handle it. Where an agent, a child agent, is a group of tools, not a tool, not a single tool, but a group of tools that you are going to use and orchestrate to with an instruction set on how it should behave and how it should work. So think of it as almost like building a declarative agent inside of your agent with a subset of the components that are inside of it. So in other words, usually you would not build an agent just for like a single knowledge source or for a single item. That would be a topic, because that's just a tool, right? But when you have like a group of them where you're like, this piece of knowledge and this tool, right, should both be used in order to do this kind of common functionality, and it should behave this way, that's when you would build a child agent. Let's see, we'll go next one, and we've got 2 minutes left. When agents are linked and the main agent routes to another, does the correlation of the end user's request or intent rely on the description of the connected agent? It does not. To some degree. So by default, what will happen whenever I said connect to a connected agent, even in the video, if you go back and watch this when it's released, you'll see that I modified the description that came in by default for that connected agent as the maker of the parent. And by doing that, I can change when it should be used. I can't change how it will behave when it is used, but I can decide when I'm going to orchestrate to it. And I can also decide if I'm going to provide it the context of the conversation as well. And later on, you're going to see the ability to do things and pass additional data. And whether you want to pass that additional data, that is also going to be something that's on the control from the person who is deciding to orchestrate to that agent. So in theory, a connected agent could have more capability than, let's say, than you actually use as the maker, and you just modify the way that it's going to orchestrate. I would tell you your mileage may vary on that, because we are doing an A to A agent protocol that makes it where we do an inventory of what's in that agent. So just be aware, I would not necessarily look at it that way. The other thing is that for an agent to be able to be connected, just be aware that the agent has to be turned on, that you are wanting it to be able to be connected to downstream. So as a maker, you can prevent someone from connecting your agent as a connected agent. And also just be aware that there's a lot of different other settings that are coming in as well that you'll have control of. Okay, how do you turn on managed for a component? The way that you do that is that a component collection, if you want to make it managed, it's part of the publishing process. So when you go to export it, so that it'll force you to publish it. Once it publishes, then it'll go through the export. And in the export settings, there is a setting whether you want it managed or unmanaged as the export. And yes, you can export it in both managed and unmanaged. Just know that there's a different version that you're going to get when you do that, because each time you do an export, you're going to get a different version number. So, so you can do that.
Awesome.
And I think we are at time. The additional questions and stuff, we'll see if we can get some more answers on that. We'll turn it back over to Ashley. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Dwayne. You guys let me know once you can see my screen again. Ah, back at feedback. How did we get here? But while we are here, why don't you guys just take this one more chance to let us know what you thought of the session. And yeah, we just want to thank you and that's kind of all we had for you guys. Please check out Dwayne here. I think the link is going to be in the chat below. So yeah, thank you to Dwayne and thank you to guys for attending, and have a good evening, morning, afternoon, night, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.